Hey guys, John here. Today we're going to be making Wet Techno in Vital, the best techno. So for this video, I didn't necessarily make my typical 8/16 bar song show-off kind of thing. This patch is more so to be played within itself, and I'll show you a quick demonstration here. But before we jump into it, on the left-hand side for our macros, we have a filter macro, we have a wet speed macro, and also a how wet macro. So let's check out this patch, and then after that, we're going to kind of dive deep and see how it was created. So here we go. Alright, so I think you get the idea. So basically, the thing that we need to remember is that this patch is going to be controlled by these three macros, so you can kind of play around with the song and have it go on for quite a long time and have these sounds sound interesting as long as you're playing around with it. So the main thing to keep in mind, so this patch is made by a saw wave for the first oscillator, another saw wave for the second oscillator, and the stabbed waveform from the third oscillator. The tuning is going to be down an octave for the first, up minus 1 octave on the first, minus 2 octaves on the second, and then up 7 semitones for the third here. For the unison, it's going to be 16 voices on the first one, 20% detune, which is standard. 4 voices for the second oscillator at 11% detune, and then 9 voices for the third oscillator at 20% detune, so standard again. So the modulations are going to be kind of interesting here because this first LFO here is going to be 8/1. I don't know why it says 8, it should be actually 16. Sometimes Vital changes that, but it's going to be 16/1, and it's going to be played at 1/1. So this whole pattern thing here is going to be played at 1 bar's length. So that being said, I basically did the editing tool here, and then you kind of just draw all these triangles, then you kind of move this tension handles to kind of get that rhythm feel, so not every single spike feels the same. Now, these are going to be modulating the level of all 3 oscillators here. So if I hit a note, these here are going to be moving every level here. As we highlight over these, we can see how the ring goes over the level here. And depending on how much modulation is basically going to be the mix of the patch here. As you can see, oscillator number 1 is at 0.553, oscillator 2 is at 0.817, and oscillator 3 is completely full power at 1. And those values aren't necessarily like precise. I just kind of mixed them to what sounded right to me. So here's the different oscillators in context. Here's the first one. Here's the second. And then here's the third here. And then all those 3 together. All right, so the filter here is going to be a ladder 24 dB. The cutoff is going to be at 129 hertz, but these are also going to be modulated by LFO 1 and this macro here. So this macro 1 right here is going to be this control over here that moves this filter right here. So that's already pre-programmed, so you don't necessarily need to mess with the filter as well. For LFO 1, it's kind of doing that as well, because through these spikes here, it's moving the filter, and this macro is basically an offset of that. So still keeping that rhythm, and then for this macro, we can kind of make it a little bit more open or a little bit more closed. That's kind of the idea behind that. And then LFO 2 is kind of where this whole wet concept comes in. So here in the effects, let's turn some of these off and talk about a little bit of the effects. So the first thing is the multiband compressor. And let's turn our filter up so we can kind of hear what's going on. So with these, it's kind of arbitrary. It's more so to taste kind of what balance you want with the lows, mids, and highs, adjusting these bars here and how much you want to compress them or upwards compress them. It's kind of to taste in that sense, but these are my settings I have here. I mainly just mess around with these bars until it sounds right to me. And then moving on, we have the distortion, which makes everything better. I mean, listen to the difference with and without distortion. It really brings that aggressive vibe to it. It's going to be on soft clip, and this drive is almost at the top at 26.97 dB, and the mix here is 0.928. Now let's turn on the delay. We're going to skip over the EQ for now. So the delay is going to be 1/8 for both sides, mid ping pong. The feedback 17.42, the mix 11.83, cutoff 60, and the spread is going to be 0.511. And a lot of this delay is really to open up the patch a little bit more than usual. So now this EQ is kind of interesting here. So on this EQ, as you can see, this band right here is moving back and forth, and it's this middle band here. So the gain is going to be controlled by this macro. The cutoff is going to be LFO2 here as well. And then also the resonance is about 51.97. So the idea behind this is that there's two macros. So the gain is going to be macro 3, which is the how wet this is going to be. So as I increase this, you can see that spike over here increase. And it's really going to give that acidy wetness sound to that techno sound, I guess. And then for the next modulation, this LFO2 here is going to be this EQ band cutoff. So while this is moving and kind of booming it back and forth, as we increase the speed, it's basically moving this tempo here on macro number 2. It'd be the same if I held my mouse here and dragged up and down, going 1/4, 1/8, and so on and so forth. So when we move these two controls, we can see this peak here change. So here's the speed. And the cool part about this is it's always quantized with the BPM of your song. So right now I'm in 140. If you're in 160, 130, whatever it may be, this wet speed will follow your tempo. So you just keep moving this up to where you feel it sounds right, and it'll be locked into tempo every time. And if you want a little bit more of that wet here, you increase this, and that's just going to increase this peak here, so this gain over here. I left a little bit of extra room here, so it's kind of intense here at the very top. Maybe you want that, but generally for the best values, it's maybe from the bottom to maybe about like 60% here. Anywhere past that gets a little bit crazy, but I kind of wanted to leave a little bit crazy room in case you want to get crazy with it. And last thing we need to talk about, if you see this random knob going here, so we're going to be on sample and hold, and this is going to be Oscillator 3 waveform. So as this moves along here, there's a small value here, and it's changing this waveform randomly to give it just random different tonality to it. So that's why you see this waveform changing, and that's at the modulation is random 1, 131.9. And you can see this blue little bar here on the waveform as well, or to the right of the waveform, and seeing that move. We also have glide on, so this doesn't really show it off because it's just one note with a kick drum and a hi-hat. However, there is always glide on, and the glide time is at 0.029 seconds. So if you are doing some type of note changes, it does sound pretty cool with that too. So that's kind of the idea behind that as well. It's also monophonic here as well, so voice is 1, because you don't really want to play a chord with this, I wouldn't imagine. But if you do want to, you can always change it down here. So that's this patch in a nutshell. Hopefully you learned something. If you like the patch, give the video a thumbs up, and also subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one. And let's play this out. See you in the next one.